Hello everyone, today we're going to do part 3 of 3.1, Basic Linear Equations in One Variable. So solve equations that require multiplication and division. So first of all, we have the division property of equality, which says if A equals B, then A divided by C equals B divided by C. For all real numbers A, B, and C, except C cannot equal 0 as well, because we are not allowed to divide by 0. So this is saying you're allowed to divide by any number without changing the equation, as long as you're not dividing by 0. If A equals B, then the multiplication property of equality says A times C equals B times C for all real numbers A, B, and C. And again, C cannot equal 0. Not because we can't multiply by 0, but if we multiply by 0, we just get 0 equals 0 on both sides, which doesn't help out at all. So we also can't multiply by 0. That part, especially for the multiplication, comes in real handy when you are doing the next math class. So next, solve each equation. So we have 10x equals negative 54. Remember when I write 10x, that's the same thing as saying 10 times x. So in order to get rid of the 10, we want to divide by 10, and we're allowed to do that. Here, the 10s cancel out, and we're left with x equals negative 54 over 10. Now, since 54 and 10 are both even, we can reduce this by 2. So divide by 2, and we get 54 divided by 2 is 27. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And don't forget the negative sign. And that can't be reduced any further, so that is our answer. Negative 27 over 5. Next, we have y over negative 7 equals negative 14. Well, y over negative 7 is the same thing as saying y divided by negative 7. So in order to cancel the negative 7 out, we're going to multiply both sides by negative 7. That way the negative 7s cancel out there. We're left with y equals, okay, negative 14 times negative 7. 7 times 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 7 times 1 plus 2 is 9. So we get 98. And a negative times, let me put a multiplication symbol there. So a negative times a negative is positive. So our answer is positive 98. Okay, C. Negative n equals 9. Now this one's a little bit tricky, but what we have to remember is that this is the same thing as saying negative 1n equals 9. When we rewrite it like that, we can see that we divide by negative 1 on both sides. That way the negative 1s cancel out. And then we get n equals 9 divided by negative 1 is negative 9. And that's the answer for C. Now, for D and E, we're dealing with more fractions. For D, we have 3/4 times x equals 12. What you might be tempted to do is, since it's multiplication, divide by 3/4 on both sides. And this is allowed, but there's an easier way so that we don't get this double stacked fraction here. So let me undo that. Instead of dividing by a fraction, I'm going to remember that when you divide by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by 3/4, we're going to multiply by 4/3 on both sides. Okay, so here the 4 cancels out the 4, the 3 cancels out the 3. We're left with x. Also, don't forget you can reduce on the right-hand side as well, because 3 can get reduced to 1. The 12 will get reduced to 4. So we're left with x equals 4 times 4, or 16. So multiplying by the reciprocal instead of dividing by a fraction is a lot of times easier. Then the last example for this part of the notes. 8/15 equals -4/5 x. So just like in D, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is -5/4 on both sides. On the left-hand side, well, 5 gets reduced to a 1, 15 gets reduced to a 3, 4 gets reduced to a 1, 8 gets reduced to a 2. Leaving us with -1 times 2, so -2. 1 times 3, 3, so -2/3 equals, and then on the right-hand side, the 4's cancel out, the 5's cancel out, and a negative times a negative makes a positive. So then we are just left with x. So x equals -2/3. And that's how you can solve equations with multiplication and division.